Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
Business Access TV is here at the JSC Core Competencies to Excel as a Corporate Secretary. I'm your host, Andrew Laidley. Please stay with us.
I wish to welcome you to yet another workshop, Corporate Secretaries Workshop. As you know, we have these workshops each year, and the reason we continue to do so is that we feel that we should be at the cutting edge of any changes that is occurring in whether locally or globally. We feel that the workshops have been beneficial to us so far, and that with each day when we have these changes, we should continue to look at educating the persons in this industry. This morning and this workshop is very special, as we will be hosting, it is being hosted in association with the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. And as we move towards introducing the Corporate Governance Index, I think today is especially important so that we can see how this can be incorporated into what we do as company secretaries and others within the industry. It is especially important that we look at this to see how our companies will score higher in terms of corporate governance. Today is intended to be a very good workshop based on the persons who will be presenting. So I invite you to stay tuned, ask the relevant questions, and ensure that when we leave here, we can implement what we have learned.
The Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators is an institution that certifies secretaries, chartered secretaries, and I believe it is the only institution in the world that does that. It's incorporated by Royal Charter and has its base in England, London, England. And our dear leader, Simon Osborne, is the CEO of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries. In Jamaica, we have the Association of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, which is a branch of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries. Today, we are very happy to be hosting this seminar with the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and I hope that what we present today, you might find something to take away from it, because we are going to try to give you something practical that you can use in your everyday life.
Governance has to suit each jurisdiction. One size cannot fit all. Even within a peer group of companies engaged in similar activities, similar business, because the dynamic is going to be different, because the business conditions are going to be different, the governance framework will necessarily be different. And as you comply or explain, also within a peer group of companies doing the same, broadly the same activity, you will find that they comply in different ways. And that's the beauty of a code of principles. So what do we mean by governance? The Cadbury definition, the process by which an organization is directed or controlled. The other perceived virtue of corporate governance on the part of politicians and policymakers is that it leads to increased opportunities and choice for all. Now that's one of those wonderful glib expressions that rolls off the tongue of a politician. And it sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But what on earth does it mean? As a political aspiration, it's great. Opportunities and choice for all. Hurrah, yeah, we'll all vote for that. But can we really expect corporate governance to deliver such an overtly political objective? I'll leave that one hanging in the air. Poor old Bob Diamond, he gets a bit of a caning over this one. He did actually say that corporate governance is not how you behave when you think no one is watching. He did actually say that. But I think it's a good reminder that, there's no point trying to do one thing, say one thing and do another. That sort of hypocrisy, you'll get found out eventually. The truth will always out. Governance is concerned with the exercise of power, the role of directors, the responsibilities of shareholders, and how those are balanced. And it also deals with disclosure, transparency, accountability, internal control, and making sure you avoid that concentration of power in too few hands. Hence the desire, it's now become standard, certainly in the UK. America's finding it harder, but actually separating the roles of chairman and chief executive so that you achieve a more constructive tension at the top levels in the C-suite. What are some of the governance hot topics? Well, I don't know what it's like here, but remuneration in the UK never ceases to amaze me. And the way in which non-executive directors serving on remuneration committees aren't smelling the coffee, I just don't get it. But and the United States is just as bad. And what that is leading to is remuneration which is detached from performance, or levels of remuneration detached from performance, are just leading to increasing inequality of wealth. And I think that could lead to unfortunate consequences socially. And it's something that has to be tackled. Hot topic. Legal risk has risen up the scale of corporate risks. The whole board diversity thing, gender is a major factor. But there is no doubt about it, board behaviour improves the more women join the board. And I know that from my own experience, funny enough, in a charity where I was deputy chair and I chaired the nomination committee. And I had to wield the knife. I removed 6 older male trustees, brought in 4 ladies, all of whom were younger. The average age came down. The speed with which business was transacted improved. Shorter board meetings, I'll drink to that. Made a difference. Now that's one example, but I think there's no doubt about it that I think the presence of women in boardrooms adds beneficially to the decision-making process. You've got the whole responsible capitalism issue, the managing of stakeholders and accountability to wider stakeholders. And that, interestingly, has led to the appointment of a committee now for a code of governance for private companies. I think that's long overdue in the UK. When you think about some of the bigger private companies, and I'm sure you've got them here, if one of those collapses, the impact on the economy and on the government could be significant. And then the whole question of board evaluations. Following the financial crisis, ICSA did some work on boardroom behaviours, the conclusion of which were 4 uncomfortable truths. Well-run companies can make strategic and sometimes catastrophic misjudgments. Risk management not properly overseen, monitored or reviewed by the board. Often it was just left to the audit committee. It's a board responsibility, is oversight of risk. Remuneration and incentivization not aligned with shareholders' interests, and a failure to inform stakeholders, not just shareholders, stakeholders, sufficiently. That work we did identified 3 areas needing attention. Institutional. Are corporate governance policies and architecture fit for purpose? Has management installed adequate processes and systems? And are directors exhibiting appropriate behaviours? So we had there the institutional, the organisational, and the behavioural. Now, we identified in that work that good practice boardroom behaviour was characterised by those 9 features. So clear understanding of the board's role. The board is there to oversee the management of the business. The board is not there to manage the business. And non-executive directors forget it's a case of noses in, fingers out. They smell the state of the business, they don't finger it. Does this business pass the smell test? Once the non-executive directors start interfering in the management of the business, it's very hard to hold an executive to account. You can't. You've syndicated the responsibility and the liability. Appropriate deployment of knowledge, skills, experience and judgment. So what balance of those have you got on the board? Independent thinking. Assumptions and established orthodoxy need to be questioned. Challenge has to be constructive. If people come onto a board full of suspicion or just trying to show off what a tough guy I am, I'll show these executives up for a load of incompetent idiots. If that's the mentality which a non-executive has, they're asking for trouble because it will just lead to tension, in fact conflict on the board. Non-executive directors have to be constructive friends of the management team. Can't overemphasize that. Constructive friends. Yes, and it's knowing how to challenge in a way which doesn't put people's backs up. And it requires a skill, emotional intelligence for a start. Yes, there has to be rigorous debate. The decision-making environment has to be supportive. There needs to be a shared vision. And for the chair, it's vital to close each item of business in a timely way, not let it go round and round and round ad nauseam. That's not the way to do it.
We go to a short break. More when we return.
Doggin Global Introduction. Doggin Global is an integrated multidisciplinary professional service firm. We are integrated as one firm and provide several professional services, including audit, accounting, tax, IT, risk, HR, performance, M&A, corporate recovery, and other advisory services. The firm is organized in several professional service units, which includes Doggin Auditors, Doggin Advisors, Doggin Legal, Doggin Finance, Doggin HR Solutions, Doggin Tech Solutions, Doggin Media, Doggin Corporate Secretarial. If you are interested in any of our services, please contact us for a free quote. Email info@doggin.global. Website doggin.global.
Welcome back to BATV's coverage of the JSE core competencies to excel as a corporate secretary.
We are now going to have a panel discussion, as you will see, and members of the local chapter will be participating, and Mrs. Henry Pottinger is going to be the moderator, and they're going to be talking about things that happen in a very practical way.
How rewarding is your job as a company secretary? Any tips that you can give to budding company secretaries, people who are waiting in the wings to take over your jobs? For me, I enjoy my job. I will not work anywhere else until I retire than with KPMG. As to rewarding, yes, it is rewarding in many respects. I like to see that the people who I work with, they are enabled, they are eloquent, they can answer questions from shareholders, they deal with matters like that with alacrity, and they are very responsive.
It's not glamorous in the sense that if the reward you're looking for is your name in lights, it's clearly the wrong profession for you. So I'm glad that Liz actually said the word enable, because you are an enabler. You're a facilitator. You know, we all understand, certainly after listening to Simon this morning, the importance of corporate governance. Well, all of that falls on your shoulders for you to administer. You pull it together. You keep all the moving pieces going in unison, and you don't, there will be no name in lights, certainly not not where I operate for that. So if that's what you, but it can be, obviously it's very rewarding in other ways. Just in terms of tips, I can't stress enough, well, there are two main things I'll say. One is that just you have to have a high level of administrative capability, and and obviously you can't do it on your own. So whether it means an internal team or going for external support, you have to be extremely organized, and you have to make sure that you create a lot of systems which allow you to ensure that you comply with all the requirements that you have, which are numerous. Other than that, I can't stress enough the importance of what we keep calling soft skills, but they're not soft at all because they're critical for the role. Definitely, there's a higher level of judgment and diplomacy and management of relationships of people which is involved. We talked a little bit earlier about the relationship the tension between management and the board, which can sometimes exist. And in that case, your role is critical because you really are the diplomat who has to kind of navigate those two relationships and those two different sets of roles within a company. So that I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you develop your relationships and that you manage personalities.
I recall some years ago I did a document for my chairman, and I went to him and I'm explaining to him what it is that I'm doing and what it is that he needs. He says to me, where I must sign. So it gives you that level of confidence and trust, and to ensure that what you're doing and what you're presenting is correct. And you must build up that whole self-integrity so that, it is not questioned. And I feel that if I have to take something to somebody and they ask me, so where is this or what is that? I do my own self-assessment, because when I do a document, it says where, what, when, why, who, and so forth. So I ask myself those questions so that, you can develop that trust when you're working with somebody.
The job is really very, very interesting. The things that come across your desk are amazing, dynamic, invigorating, challenging. Scope is very, very diverse. Corporate governance has really taken its hold, rather, on Jamaica and within the Caribbean. There is just so much that we have to learn and offer to our clients and to ourselves. Certainly, if someone is looking at this as a profession, I think corporate governance is the way to go. That's just me personally. You will always assist and help your clients, but there's always a nuance on what has occurred, what should have been done, and how we're going to correct it. And that's what I love about it. And working with PwC and my team, we have just so much to do. You've got to be very structured, lists, and more lists. You have to be very detail-oriented and be able to pick up, and very meticulous, and be able to pick up errors very easily.
In my role as a corporate secretary, the reward for me is I am constantly learning. Every day there is something that I didn't know, or something now that I have to go and know. And it is no 2 days are ever the same. Especially in our company, which we tend to be very entrepreneurial, the ideas come, and as a company secretary and as compliance, I have to research to say, can it be done? Can it not be done? Would this be in breach of anything? I would also advise that the regulators are good allies. From where I sit, I call them a lot because I need their guidance. They are more intimate with the laws and regulations and how they interpret what I am asking them to just bounce things off. So I would ask you to use them up. The company's office, the stock exchange, the Bank of Jamaica, the FSC, they're all very open to questions. No one has said no to me yet. Even if they don't know the answer, they'll research it and get back to us. And our real success lies in having a great team behind us, including KPMG.
Thank you.
And our team in DOMREP, Trinidad and Jamaica, that supports me because we just could not do it alone.
Thanks a lot, ladies. I hope then that those of you in the audience found something informative, instructive, that you can take away from this panel discussion.
Coming up after the break, what companies need to know about the Corporate Governance Index.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
Hi, it's Novia MacDonald-White, Senior Associate Editor at the Jamaica Observer. And guess what? You are watching Business Access Television.
Welcome back to BATV's coverage of the JSE core competencies to excel as a corporate secretary.
So what is this corporate governance index that we have been talking about? And it really is a tool that has been developed to measure how all entities that are listed, at least surely for us listed on the stock exchange, how it conforms to various established corporate governance principles. Now, typically, the index has a numerical value, right, where the extremes of the values are overall good and poor. And also, it assists in improving the transparency and ultimately FDI for countries. Because research has shown that countries and surely listed companies, like using the stock exchanges that have a corporate governance index, especially when there's not very strong regulatory environment for them to operate within, the corporate governance index has actually helped to create greater investment opportunities. And what the research has shown is that countries with the indices have shown significant growth in corporate governance practices. So let's talk a little about the corporate governance index in Jamaica. And the index has been developed by the Jamaica Stock Exchange. As I indicated before, it's the first for the Caribbean region. The process that is being utilized is that it's going to be automatic, so that whether you're listed on the junior market or you're listed on the main market, you are going to be assessed using the index manual. So the purpose of the index, as stated by the Jamaica Stock Exchange, is to first of all periodically measure listed companies' conformance to required corporate governance principles and practices. It also should help to give companies an opportunity to differentiate themselves from other companies, because while all companies are listed and expected to be guided by certain principles and certain rules and certain legislations, you can differentiate yourself by the score that you probably will get based on the fact that you are adhering to a number of these principles. It will also provide a benchmark by which other parties, external parties, locally and internationally now, can gauge companies' adherence to corporate governance practices.
Every year, we have a workshop for the corporate secretary because we realize that they are an integral part of the corporate governance and effectiveness of publicly listed companies, whether it's on the junior exchange or the big board. And we were fortunate in that the head of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of the UK was coming on a visit to Jamaica to meet with the Jamaica Stock Exchange, because we are in the process of representing them in providing training and continuing development for corporate secretaries, persons who want to be corporate secretaries, and as a matter of fact, there is an upcoming fast track that's going to be available for attorneys and chartered accountants who invariably are performing the duties of the chartered secretary, and what it will allow them to do is to have the formal chartered secretary designation. So we felt that this was very important to continue to lift the profile of the chartered secretary and their role in listed companies.
I thought the conference was excellent, actually. The seminar was excellent. It touched on very important aspects that are critical for the development of our businesses within Jamaica and internationally, and for our companies, concentrating on corporate governance and the amendments that have just occurred in the Companies Act and why corporate governance is so important. So I encourage everyone to be at the next seminar.
The governance is here to stay. There's no doubt about that. And it's the proportionate application of governance principles which is so important in all types of organisation. But in order to be able to do that, every organisation needs to be clear about its organisational purpose. Then the board, the directors, need to be clear about the key values by which that purpose is going to be delivered. Only then can you devise a governance framework for your particular type of organisation. Every organisation, however big, however small, needs to do that.
Who does corporate governance benefit again?
Obviously, it benefits the companies themselves, it benefits their shareholders as the owners, or if it's an unincorporated body, the members. But it also benefits wider society. I think that's the important point. Their employees, those with whom they do business, and ultimately it benefits the government, because if an enterprise fails and is employing people and it fails because of poor governance practices, the ultimate responsibility financially was going to fall on the government, for example in social security payouts for unemployed people. I think also if companies fail because of poor governance, it doesn't reflect well on the country. And for a country that is trying to entice inward investment, if the governance framework isn't up to snuff, as we say, then that could have a potentially negative effect. So good governance, it just makes sense. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence too that good governance enhances reputation. It also, for organisations, particularly commercial ones, reduces the cost of capital. It just makes sense.
That's it from us here at the JSC Core Competencies to Excel as a Corporate Secretary. I've been your host, Andrew Laidley, and thanks for tuning in to Business Access TV. Serious about business.
The Good Life, your weekly dose of information on nutrition, wellness, and fitness. Discover ways to nurture your mind, body, and spirit.
My name is Herbert Chung, Executive Chairman, Co-Founder, Honeybun 1982 Limited. You're watching Business Access TV. Serious about business.
thing. Of course, there's a tension of this new thing, but they're not incapacitated, right? We have some new cases now. I can't comment on those just yet, but certainly the earlier cases that we had who are still with us, they look like you and me. Most persons will recover. Probably about over 80% of persons will probably have a relatively mild illness. But there are persons that, for whatever reason, who will get a more serious infection. So persons over 60 tend to have a worse outcome, and persons with what we call comorbid factors, so persons who are hypertensive or diabetic or even asthmatic, tend to have a worse outcome. But that doesn't mean that everybody who has that will die.
It cannot be overstated.
COVID-19 is the name that they have finally decided on for the name of the disease. So that's coronavirus disease 19 for 2019. And the name of the virus that is causing that is now named SARS-CoV-2. So it's that new that persons had to deliberate for a while to say, what are we going to call this new virus? And what are we going to call this new disease?
Is it airborne?
In recent times, there are persons who are querying the possibility of airborne, but that would not be the primary method of transmission. It's just that we should now begin to think that it could be airborne.
Just to recap, remember, contracted COVID-19 is not a death sentence. Just call the Ministry of Health and Wellness if you see signs or have symptoms related to the virus. Do not proceed to your private doctor or a health facility.
Tip number 1. Keep your regular medication and other supplies well stocked. Ensure there is access to several weeks of medications and supplies in case there is a need for you to stay home. Monitor food and other medical supplies needed and create a plan in the event that such resources become depleted. Tip number 2. Stay sanitized. Tip number 3. Respond to multi-generational living situations. Many older adults live in homes where other members, such as children, may have frequent colds. Therefore, do not share personal items like food, water bottles, and utensils. If possible, choose a room in your home that can be used to separate sick household members from those who are healthy. Tip number 4. Develop intentional caregiver plans. Older adults may be caregivers or may receive care themselves. Caregivers and care recipients should discuss their preparation plans, including how to stay in touch via phone or email. Determine who can provide you with care if your caregiver gets sick. And tip number 5, keep abreast of essential up-to-date information. That means you should find and regularly check a trusted information source.
There is so much fake news circulating regarding coronavirus. Some are just laughable. What are some of the myths you've heard? Please do share with us. Take a look at this next feature as we clarify the mistruths.
There have been many myths surrounding the coronavirus disease, the same one now officially known as COVID-19. I've heard that Jamaica's temperature is too hot, so COVID-19 won't survive here, or that you need to eat garlic to help prevent you from being infected. I know you've also heard some stuff and may even believe half or more of what you've heard. So let's take some time and debunk the myths of coronavirus. People have said that the novel coronavirus cannot be transmitted in the heat. That is a lie. The virus can be transmitted in all areas, including those with hot and humid weather like Jamaica. Another myth is that it can be transmitted through a mosquito bite. To date, there has been no information or evidence to suggest that the new coronavirus could be transmitted by mosquitoes. This one has been very popular. Only old people can contract the coronavirus. Do not be fooled. People of all ages can be infected by the new coronavirus. However, older people, particularly those with pre-existing medical conditions like asthma, diabetes, and heart disease, appear to be more vulnerable to becoming severely ill with the virus. This is another popular one. Eat more garlic, you won't catch the virus. Garlic is a healthy food that may have some antimicrobial properties. However, there is no evidence from the current outbreak that eating garlic has protected people from the new coronavirus. These are just some of the myths that surround the coronavirus. Make sure you take time out to know your facts and do what needs to be done as we all try to contain the spread of this disease.
I wish to emphasize that the success of our efforts is contingent on the support of all Jamaicans, including the deliberate efforts to access and share accurate information on the virus, thus helping to minimize the fears and anxiety that has been associated with the spread of the COVID-19. At the same time, we must, in keeping with good hygiene, maintain a distance of at least 2 meters from persons who are coughing or sneezing, frequently perform hand hygiene by washing hands thoroughly with soap and water or using a hand sanitizer if hands are not visibly soiled, cover our mouths and noses when coughing or sneezing with a tissue and then discarding it, and avoid touching our faces and each other unnecessarily.
You heard the Health Minister. Let's play our part while building those immune systems as we tackle this virus together.
The National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, wishes to advise the public that the Mandela Park in St. Andrew is closed. This is in adherence with government's restrictions on gatherings in public spaces. The halfway tree-based park will be closed until further notice. The NSWMA will continue to closely monitor the announcements of the Ministry of Health and Wellness to make decisions in the best interest of the citizens of Jamaica.
I want to make it abundantly clear that the quarantine that has been put in place is the law. Breaking the law can have severe consequences, as was articulated by the Attorney General. The reason why we put quarantining into place is to protect you and to protect the entire society. And therefore, as we move through this epidemic, we have to utilize different tools. Yes, we can use a big stick of the law, but what we want more importantly is moral suasion. And we want people to feel that their compliance is for their own good. And therefore, it's self-compliance and self-regulation that we are trying to encourage, a behavior change, because we are going through the crisis together. No system is perfect, and you will never have 100% compliance when it comes down to human behavior, no matter how strict the rules are. But we are encouraging persons to understand, and we can see from the evidence, as pointed out in this chart, the effectiveness of quarantining. If we had not put those restrictions in place, what could have occurred if those positive cases that we have now identified from our first case was able to move throughout the community and the wider Jamaica? Just think of the impact of that and realize that because we acted early and because we acted swiftly, we were able to contain any further spread.
Cancer, stress, high blood pressure. Guard yourself against these potentially deadly conditions by eating healthy. Give your body long life with foods such as low-fat milk, dried and fresh peas and beans, unsalted nuts and seeds, fresh vegetables, fruits and coconut water, and eliminate processed seasonings such as seasoning salt, soy sauces and ketchup. When it comes to meats, remember to remove the skin to reduce the intake of fats and oils. Meats should also be baked, steamed, grilled, or roasted. Fish is also a preferred protein option. To eat healthy, fill your body with a variety of foods from all the food groups. And remember, eat at a slow pace and in small bites to help aid digestion. This helps to maintain a healthy, balanced, and nutritious diet, strengthening your body to ward off illness and prolong life.
you're like most kids, you've probably heard at least one parent say, don't forget to take your vitamins. Eat your fruits and salads. They're packed with vitamins. And you heed the advice. But do you know why? Do you know what exactly vitamins are?
Vitamins are substances that are found in foods we eat. Our body needs them to work properly. Each vitamin has a special role to play. For example, vitamin D in milk helps us develop strong bones and teeth. Vitamin A in carrots helps us to see at night. Vitamin C in oranges helps our bodies to heal from a cut. And B vitamins in leafy green vegetables help our bodies make protein and energy. There are two categories of vitamins, fat-soluble and water-soluble. Fat-soluble vitamins are the ones called A, D, E, and K.
When we eat foods that contain fat-soluble vitamins, the essential nutrients are stored in the fatty tissues of our bodies and our livers until our bodies need them.
The water-soluble vitamins are C and B complex. These cannot be stored in our bodies and will dissolve in water before our bodies can absorb them. Any vitamin C or B that our bodies do not use pass through our systems, mostly when we urinate. So they need to be replaced regularly to ensure a fresh supply every day.
But let's break it down and take a look at one of these vitamins, C.
Vitamin C is often referred to as the cold-fighting vitamin. It is also known as a wonder worker because it plays an important role in building and maintaining our tissues. Doctors say it can enhance the function of the immune system and plays a role in the formation of important enzymes in the body. Vitamin C is important because it protects the body from skin diseases, respiratory infections, and cardiovascular problems.
According to nutritionists, human beings cannot produce their own supply of vitamin C, so we have to obtain it through our diet.
Vitamin C is found in citrus and other fruits such as oranges, limes, lemons, tangerines, grapefruit, papaya, strawberries, melons, and cantaloupes. It can also be found in vegetables like tomatoes, broccoli, green and red bell peppers, potatoes, peas, raw lettuce, and cabbage.
Vitamin C can be lost easily during cooking, particularly frying, so it's recommended that people steam their vegetables to minimize loss.
Vitamin C is also good for preserving the body from aches, pains, and heart disease. If we do not have enough vitamin C in our systems, it could lead to health complications. Diseases or ailments may include gum bleeding, skin discoloration, lack of energy, tooth decay, poor wound healing, easy bruising, loss of appetite, and pain in the joints. According to medical experts, there are certain groups of persons who can easily use up ascorbic acid, that is, vitamin C found in citrus and green vegetables, more rapidly than others. These are alcohol consumers, smokers, diabetics, individuals under stressful conditions or fever, and the elderly.
It is important to remember that vitamin C is also a highly effective antioxidant.
For additional information on vitamin C, consult your doctor or nutritionist. You can also get valuable tips from any government health institution close to you. So be health-wise.
We've come to the end of the show. Do catch us again tomorrow right here on this station. Another half hour of informative features awaits you. Until then, please send your feedback to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jn. You may also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. There you'll find credible information on the government's response to containing the spread of the novel coronavirus on the island, and much more. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.
I started out selling out of the trunk of my car. If everybody think the same way, everybody going in the same line.
Being an entrepreneur takes everything that you've got. Weekends? What's weekends? We work on a weekend. There are real opportunities everywhere you look. But you have to have the passion.
If I do my part well, then everything is okay.
We believed in ourselves and our families believed in us.
Being convinced of this great opportunity, why we are all here doing what we're doing now.
You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access TV.
Serious. Serious about business.
Business Access TV comes to you from the Jamaica Pegasus in New Kingston for the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar focusing on the theme, Achieving Growth, Sustaining Viability. I am Tamara McHale. We'll have more in just a moment. We're here having a quick chat with Mr. Sixto Coy, and he's, of course, the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica. We're just trying to get a bit of background on the importance of this organization. Mr. Coy, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us, how long has this organization been around and how important is the IACJ?
The ICAJ has been around for over 50 years. Its mandate is to control the operations of chartered accountants in Jamaica. For you to be a practicing member to sign off on financial statements, you have to be a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica. That's a requirement by law. So all auditors that sign financial statements have to be a member of the Institute. Apart from that, we do provide a lot of training for our members. Continued professional development is key, and chartered accountants, as you know, hold a lot of responsible positions in the country, so training is required. So the Institute does play its part. On behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica, I welcome you to the 2019 Business Seminar. The theme, Achieving Growth, Sustaining Viability, is based on the premise that rapid and constant change in the global business environment demand our attention. We at ICAJ therefore felt it necessary to expose participants to current business trends. Today's business seminar features several dynamic speakers and panelists from various backgrounds. The presentations and discussions will cover critical issues that affect business and society. The topics have been carefully selected to make you aware of potential risks and the impacts these may have on your business and the corporate environment. Let us play our part in creating new avenues for Jamaica to achieve growth and sustain viability as we take our rightful place in the global economy.
Today, we have amongst us our keynote speaker, Mr. William Mahfood, Jamaica's business guru. Mr. William Mahfood is chairman of the Wisynco Group. His career began as a warehouse supervisor at Wisynco Trading, working for the family, learning the ethics of hard work. This followed with an exceptional 20-year stint as the company's managing director, then the appointment as chairman of the Wisynco Group in 2014. Beyond Wisynco, the former PSOJ president is passionate about building a stronger Jamaica. He has served on teams in support of national interest and community upliftment. Here to give us his reflections on Jamaica's business environment and strategies to achieve growth is Mr. William Mahfood. Please make him welcome.
I really do feel very, very honored to be here. I was, in a ride coming up in the elevator with a young lady who is an accountant, of course. And I said, I think accountants have the best sense of humor, so I'm going to try as much as possible to keep you engaged. Today, I'm going to speak a little bit about how, in the environment that we're in, how Wisynco achieves growth sustainably. And that is really, I think, the key to the presentation. I want you to really contemplate for a minute, you know, what does real growth look like? Well, if you looked at some of the top companies in the United States that have grown really crazy in the last 10 years, companies that some of them didn't even exist 10 years ago. And one of the most important common threads that I've noticed, and this is what I really want to focus on, is how they treat people. So for me, as an executive over the years, I have also really focused on that. So one of the key messages that I want to try and get across today is that companies, countries, industries, it doesn't matter what you want to look at, it's 100% going to achieve sustainable growth through the development and the treatment and the impact on their people. Our mission statement is to improve the lives of our people. And so you ask yourself, well, how do we do that? So I'm going to speak a little bit about how we engage with the people in our organization, how we continue to improve the lives of our people. And I want to focus on, you know, one is on the area of remuneration, the other is on the area of engagement, and the most important is on the area of development. Looking at the Wisynco team, today we have just over 2,500 direct employees at Wisynco. In our affiliated companies, and we now have a number of affiliated companies, the total Wisynco affiliated employees is close to 5,000. And one of the things that we focus on in terms of, on the remuneration side, Wisynco, we realize that in the current environment, there's a lot at the lower level of the team members, there was a lot of movement of people. With them unemployment coming down at the levels it currently is, what we saw and what we realized was we were losing a lot of people who were on the line staff. We see it in the restaurant business, and we see it also in our warehouse and manufacturing. So we looked at it, and in July of this year, we gave a 25% salary increase to every single employee at the lower level of our teams. I'm not going to stand up here and profess that we have the best salaries in the industry, but what we have done is we have also looked at other ways to improve performance through incentive. So we have put in place a number of other additional measures for remuneration. Our entire line staff now in like the warehouse and distribution also get a performance-based incentive. Wisynco also has probably one of the most, I would say, dynamic profit share schemes in the country. 15% of the company's net profit after tax is paid out in profit share to our entire team. So almost $500 million last year was paid out to our entire team members as profit share. We realized that there was even more ways to get better performance, better engagement from our employees, and this year we're going to be changing it to, rather than paying it out once per year, we're going to pay it out quarterly. Never, ever regret paying people for performance, and that is the most important message as far as compensation. In terms of Wisynco, the performance basically speaks for itself. I think if you consider, you know, the other side of the equation where the people are concerned is really development. So over the last few years, the challenge that I've come across personally, and I've asked our entire team to look at, is how do we develop future leaders in the organization for continuity, sustainability in the organization's development and growth. Our last quarter revenue grew 36%. Now, that is not a small task. So in all areas of the organization, we are seeing tremendous need, tremendous demand, And that is now manifested itself in our leaders, in our team, in the ability for us to continue to grow and sustain that growth through development of the people. We've put in 2 or 3 areas of development. So one of the areas, we have a program called LEAD. I should know what it stands for, but I apologize. It is basically looking at, within the organization, all of the top talent and bringing them in on an ongoing basis for building their capabilities to be able to put them through the organization in more senior leadership roles. And it is one of the most important programs that we have started in the last few years. So that is on the people side. Then you have the customers. And you know, we always say, well, our customers are our most important constituents. Well, the reality is the people internally are actually the most important constituents. Now, if I speak to a customer, I wouldn't tell them that. I'm going to tell them that they are the most important. The reality is, if your team members are not happy and satisfied, they will portray an image to your customers that is extremely negative. So if you want happy customers, make sure you have happy team members. So all of this basically is manifested itself at Wisynco in 36% revenue growth in the last quarter. And for those shareholders of you who are here, clap yourselves. And I continuously push the team to do better. 52% growth in net profit before tax for the last quarter. I actually anticipate that within 2 years, I think it's possible, Wisynco can double its revenues. After all of that, what have we achieved? Well, I mean, Wisynco now has, in the last 7 or 8 years, 14% compounded annual growth rate. A return on shareholder equity of upwards of 26%. In the last quarter, our return on equity was 39%. Who did it? Well, it's not me. The truth is I had very, very little to do with it. It's a team. And that is really what I think the clear message is today. What makes countries achieve growth sustainably are the people. That's the key message that I want to get across.
Cash flow and budgeting analysis. A business can be profitable and still run into trouble due to cash flow issues. We can forecast and evaluate your company's financial condition, estimate financing requirements, and track cash flow sources and uses. For more information and to discuss your requirements with one of our experts, please contact us today. Email info@dodgen.global. Website https://dodgen.global.
I want to talk quickly now on the other side of what the company has accomplished. I don't have to tell you about, you know, unfortunately this podium is not flat, so I couldn't put my bottle of water, the finest water from under the earth, on the podium. Thank you very much. But as all of you know, if you ever see me in public, I always have a bottle with me. That is delicious. But I want to talk about innovation, because the reality is one of the key sort of tenets of our success has been innovation. Innovating products, innovating business opportunities, innovating the way that we go to market, innovating our distribution. And if you look at, you know, I'm going to give you a quick story about water, as we say. The brand itself is only 17 years old. We started in 2002, and you know, many of you might have heard the story, but basically we could not get people to buy bottled water on the street. It was something that we had a big challenge. It was only available in certain areas. So the key for us to grow the business was look at the distribution and create opportunities for consumers to get bottled water at any location where other beverages were sold. And so we came up with a concept at the time to put bigger soft drinks put 6 bottles free in a case of bigger soft drinks, giving it to the smaller outlets, and that's how bottled water eventually became available. The rest is history. I mean, today it is the #1 beverage by far in the country of any brand, of any type of beverage, whether alcoholic or otherwise. And we have had tremendous spin-offs. So if you look at Cran Water, for example, the product that is now a huge, huge brand. It is the 2nd largest beverage brand in the country, and it is now spinning off sparkling. We have melon flavor. We have different sizes and formats. So our team is continuing to innovate, and that is one of the core sort of abilities for us as a company to keep growing sustainably. While we have gotten big, my biggest fear has always been to become, slow. So we always, we constantly speak about at our executive sessions, how do we remain agile? How do we continue to transform? And we do transform. People who have worked in Wisynco know that we go through constant change in terms of our sales structure, our route to market, how we engage with customers, even in how we engage with the people. Because people's needs change, the team members have growing concerns about areas that they always are going to be changing. We always look at ways to continue to improve and reinvent ourselves. That has been one of the cornerstones of success as well. And then finally, we continue to invest in Jamaica. We're very, very committed. Today, Wisynco, through its affiliated companies, Worthy Park and Tradewinds, is the largest agro-processing company in Jamaica. So we're not only investing in distribution, but we're, as shareholders, we're investing in agriculture. When everybody is running to leave sugar, Wisynco is heading into sugar. A lot of people actually would think we must be crazy, but the truth is that Jamaica has a cornerstone of sugar production, and I think that we must continue with it. Similarly, in the agro-processing juices, we're one of the few companies that have, for consumers now, you can get 100% juice, you can get 30% juice, you can get water, soft drinks. We have the full gamut of beverage offerings for every consumer, and that is really speaking to what our consumers need. So all in all, we're continuing to invest in Jamaica, continue to invest in our people, and I hope that many of you who are participating as shareholders continue to be pleased with our results, and I thank you very much. I don't know if there's any questions. Thank you very much.
What a riveting presentation there. Tell us, why was it important for you to focus on that topic of achieving growth and, ensuring sustainability, viability?
So, Tamara, thank you. Thank you for having me. One of the things that we have come to the appreciation in our economy here in Jamaica is that growth is one of the most riveting, sort of demanding factors for the economy. And with the eventual turnaround in our economy over the last 5 years, a lot of initiatives that have been put in place are driven towards that growth. So Wisynco as a company has had a record of growth, 14% compounded annual growth for the last 8 or 10 years. And with all of the initiatives that we have put in as a company, we have continued to see that growth and the expansion. This past quarter, our financial quarter ended September. We had probably one of the best quarters in the company's history. And all of these factors motivated by and driven by our people. And it's this is why I focused on that in my presentation.
Okay, and for those who may have missed some parts of it, what are some of the critical points, or what are the two major points you would actually want persons to leave with from your presentation today?
Okay, so the first is the people are at the center of everything that we do, and how they have been the drivers of that growth. And secondly is ensuring that we have the right environment, and the environment in terms of, our consumers, their health, looking out for things like recycling initiatives and the environmental impact that we have as a company, and how we continue to focus on those areas.
Okay. And I mean, just recently, Jamaica was again lauded for being the best performing stock market in the world. What do you think, is the reason for this?
Well, I mean, when you have, companies, and not to blow our own horn, but when you have companies like Wisynco that come to the market and less than 2 years, 300% increase, those kind of moves help. I think combination of that, the factors in terms of lower interest rates, there's more access to capital. All of those factors are impacting positively on the stock exchange.
When we return, we look at how the trends in technology are affecting consumer behavior. Stay with us.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
Welcome back to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar, focusing on the theme Achieving Growth, Sustaining Viability. More informative conversations coming up.
You've asked us to address the topic of trends in technology affecting consumer behavior. And I take it that your interest is not so much in the consumers themselves, but what their behavior means for your business and its growth and sustainability. And in your blurb, you mentioned talking a little bit about the impact of the mobile phone and the internet, which perhaps are the most visible manifestations of the drivers that are currently impacting how technology affects people's behavior. But most of you who are of the same vintage as I am would appreciate that the mobile phone and the internet have been around for the better part of 25 years. I had my first mobile phone when I was working with the Jamaica Telephone Company, and I date myself, right? Because the name Jamaica Telephone Company is about 4 generations back. We've gone through Telecoms of Jamaica, Cable and Wireless, Lime, Flow, so I'm probably dating myself. But I had my first mobile phone in 1996. And I used to pack it up, put it in the car. It was in like a little suitcase. And that was my mobile phone then. So mobile phones have been around for a long time. The internet has been around well before early 90s, and the web around then. So these are not new phenomena. So what we perceive, what we sense in terms of the things that are driving the behavior of consumers is a more recent issue. And so perhaps the mobile phone and the internet are not the primary drivers. Perhaps they are just key components, nevertheless, in a larger ecosystem that's driving this paradigmic shift. And so that's what I want to talk about a little bit. Social media is a far greater influencer on people's awareness, the information they consume, and their buying choices than any other form of traditional media or communication channels. People's attention span and their bandwidth for communications is 7 seconds. So the goldfish is now ahead of us in terms of attention to detail. And 128 characters. Well, Twitter is now 200 and something, right? You can thank the president to the north for that. And the mobile phone is of greater value to people than toothbrushes or sex. So that is the consumer that we're dealing with today. So this is far more fundamental than the internet or the mobile phone. Those are quite important components of this emerging digital ecosystem. But there are a set of fundamental rules that we need to understand as businesses, as professionals, to really begin to strategize for how we deal with this transformation. First of all, there are a set of rules that drive the digital economy. Moore's law, every 18 months, processing power holds constant, cost is constant, processing power doubles. So this mobile phone that I have in my pocket right now is more powerful than the mainframe computers that I was running, and I was working with Alcan maybe 20, 30 years ago. They're more powerful than those mainframes, right? So it means that processing power is growing rapidly. Technology gets relentlessly faster, smaller, cheaper. And every year you can buy, for the same price, twice what you bought last year. There's no other commodity that exhibits that behavior besides technology. Metcalfe's law, the usefulness of a network equals the square of the number of users. One fax machine is useless, right? Yeah? 2 fax machines, okay, I can communicate with one person. A network of fax machines, all of a sudden the utility increases exponentially. And that's the effects of the internet, right? So we call network externalities, network effects. And the third law, Gilder's law, the amount of globally available bandwidth grows at least 3 times faster than computer power. So as fast as computer power is growing, bandwidth is growing 3 times as fast, which means that the network becomes the computer. Cloud computing, desktop computing will soon be a thing of the past. Nowadays, when my son communicates with me, he does it in Google Docs, not on Microsoft Office, which is premises-based. And because I'm old school and I like to download it to a Word document and then do stuff, he says, "What are you doing? That's so inefficient." Right? So the network becomes the processing platform. And these are significant laws that drive a set of disruptive technologies. So cloud computing, don't think of cloud computing as a business. Don't think of cloud computing as just an alternative, cheaper form of computing. Think of it as a way of driving business agility. Data is a new oil in this environment. So data is not anymore stuff that we collect from people by asking them questions. It is exhaust. It emerges as a result of commerce, social interactions, Internet of Things, or use of the mobile phones. And it is the primary pillar for the digital economy. And that drives, in organizations, artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and I think you hear a little bit more about that later. And then there's social media, the digital channels of engagement. This is where public sentiment, opinions, and consensus is shaped and influenced, and you ignore it at your peril. Just ask the people who participated in the last elections in North America, right? Social media was a big influencer. So when we think about technology and the trends and the influences, these are the things that drive those activities. And Google is just everywhere. They know everything. My colleagues there know how much I travel. Whenever Google each year tells me, here are the 20 countries you've visited, and here are all the locations you've been, and here's where you've gone, that's disturbing. Do I switch it off? No, because of the convenience of it. So the question is, in this environment, in this emerging environment, and these influences that are driving consumer behavior, very sophisticated technologies, right? Who is what my colleague Evan Duggan likes to speak about, the leader of record? Who needs to manage this? Who needs to make the decisions about how we embrace these technologies? So digital technologies and information technology are business assets, business resources. This is not a technology play. And this is a leadership imperative, right? So responding to these trends, and they're not trends anymore, they are here. It's useless talking about the coming digital or the emerging digital economy. The only thing that is emerging is the choices we make about how to embrace it and how to be ready for it and how to compete in it and how to excel in it.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
How many of you would have turned back this morning if you had left home and realized that you didn't have your phone? Right. So Dr. McNaughton spoke to the big phone that he had to bulk around and stuff, and maybe 15, 20 years ago we may have left the phone at home, maybe. But we're not doing it today. And even if we leave and go about our day, we're turning back at some point. We're going back at lunchtime to get the phone or something of the sort, right? The internet has impacted our lives. It has changed how it is that we engage. Mobile phones have made it easier to access the internet. It has made it easier for us to stay connected. It has allowed us as consumers to maximize the value. The phones have allowed us as consumers to maximize that value of the internet. Being able to shop, being able to communicate, being able to access information. In Jamaica, we have fairly good cell service. We have fairly good coverage most of the places, except right now we have some issues, but talk to Flo and Digicel about that. In January, HubSpot said that we had more mobile subscriptions. We had more active mobile phones in circulation than we had people in Jamaica. So that's everybody who have 2 phones on the desk there. We know about pharmacies accepting prescriptions via WhatsApp now. We know about PriceMart and Fontana having e-commerce websites that we can order our things. In the case of PriceMart, we can actually get our stuff delivered to us. Mailpack Local has a feature where we can order from supermarkets, pharmacies, and PriceMart, and they deliver the stuff to us. The proliferation of internet-connected devices has invoked a large-scale change in how we want to be engaged. We are consumers, right? IoT devices are becoming commonplace in our home and in our lives. Sometimes we don't even realize it. We don't realize how much we have become dependent on it. We think that we're protecting ourselves. We think that we, keeping the smart speakers away from the house so that they don't listen to us, but the phone listening to us and Google know everything. I accepted a long time ago that Google is just a part of my life. I'm gonna embrace it. Big Brother's gonna know everything. It's just how it is, and you know what? I'll take the convenience. I don't have anything to hide yet. But that's us on a personal level. But as a business, how does that affect what we do? As businesses, one of the big things that that the internet and these devices have disrupted for us is the way that we manage payment, the way that we collect or exchange or trade our commodities, our services. Our products are our value. That's how that's our representation of, this is what I have for you, this is what would benefit you, now give me some money for it. That disruption has caused businesses to have to be a little bit more flexible. We see things like, mobile money is not new. Moving money that way is not new. But it's growing as a payment option here in Jamaica. There's ATMs, there's a lot of point-of-sale systems. There is the whole gamut of different credit cards and debit cards. Visa and MasterCard are here. They are direct partners with the banks. They are direct partners with people like us, like MC Systems. You have things like the JUTC Smarter Card. JUTC says, I don't want no more paper in my bus. This is a way that I'm safeguarding my business. It's a way that I'm ensuring that I collect for the trip that you have come on the bus to do. No, it's not all wonderful. there are some challenges. There are some challenges in how it is that we manage this ecosystem. And those challenges come at a cost, a large cost sometimes. This ease of movement in money and this ease of movement in commodities, of goods and services, this borderless market has caused some, it has opened up trade. It has also opened up ability for fraudsters to do what they do best. And we see that happening in ATM skimming. You can take out they find ways to put devices in the card readers. Now we do things to combat that. We've changed out how it is that those card readers operate. We've changed the orientation so that the cards do not go in directly so you can't read the entire mag stripe. We have issues like terminal cloning. So your POS, your Verifone terminals, what happens is because of this openness of the market, they can go online and buy these cloned or knockoff terminals and conduct transactions, unfortunately. We do our best to manage it. We try to make sure that they don't get away from us, as we would say, in the market. This mobile money, this ease of movement, this electronic payment has also allowed scamming. We know about scamming. We know about the lot of scamming. We know about the card fraud. We know about it all. We can't allow it to stop us from doing business. We just have to be vigilant. We have to do what we can do to safeguard ourselves. Try not to use your credit cards on these websites that are not verified. You try to make sure that you don't show your PIN carelessly. Pay attention when you're using an ATM to the state of the ATM, state of the hardware. Make sure it's not shaky, that kind of thing. Micro businesses have the ability to they have lower fees because they have things like the mobile POSs that have allowed them to get a card machine at a lower cost than a traditional card machine. I have personally deployed point-of-sale machines in our fruits market. The internet and mobile technology has affected how and what we buy. It has fueled Jamaica's business economy greatly. Businesses must adjust strategy and introduce digital channels to engage customers, remain viable, and grow. Digital technology has changed everything.
So, no doubt, technology has empowered the consumer. We now have choices. It's no longer limited by location, but as we say, it's borderless. Are we there? How far are we from being globally competitive in a real way to take advantage of all the opportunities?
We have a long way to go. I think many of our businesses don't, and for the moment we have the luxury of not having to be urgent about it because to a large extent the broader ecosystem has not evolved as it should. But we did some surveys last year of the leadership of many organizations. Many people recognize the importance of digital transformation, but also most organizations and most leaders confess that we have not really thought about what our strategy is or should be. And you have to look broadly across the ecosystem. I mean, our consumers, fortunately for most of our businesses, have not themselves yet made the transformation. Just ask the mobile payments providers who rolled out GKM Pay, the credit union, Quisk. Consumers have still not embraced digital means of payment to a large extent because cash is still king and there's a cultural barrier there.
Some very interesting conversations there from that panel discussion. We're, of course, at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar. But it's not over yet. We'll have more when we return.
We are serious about the business of real estate, so catch Home Sweet Home Sundays at 4:30 p.m. or if you missed it, check our website at batvja.com.
In sharing my journey through business,
am going to speak more about the softer skills and the things that occurred during my business development. I know I was introduced as the CEO of Honeybun. I'm also past president of the Jamaica Exporters Association, now merged with the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, and a director on the Jamaica Manufacturers Association board. So it was 1982 when Honeybun started, and I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, so I feel so lame to tell it again. But if you want a journey, it has to start at the beginning. So I had just been married. My husband and I met in Canada, and we returned to Jamaica to start our business. He was in pastry business at the time, and I was a teacher at Campion College. So having graduated with my degree in psychology and math, my husband swore that I was going to use the psychology on him and the math for my students. However, he bought a business, which was Honeybun. At the time, Honeybun was a retail bakery in Spanish Court and Premier Plaza, for those of you who can remember. And in our Chinese heritage, the wife always just give up what she's doing and go and work in the business. So I took the line and I went to work with my husband in the business. We soon decided that I would manage the business because he had other business endeavors that he was pursuing, more in line with real estate and distribution. I'm going to skip forward to the 90s. That was 1982. In the 90s, we were hit, like many companies, with the devaluation. And the only thing I can remember out of that nightmare was that the dollar went, or rent went from something like 12,000 to 90-odd thousand. So that was a big hit for us. And so what did we decide to do was we decided to go into wholesale baking instead. This was a turning point for me in business because it was at that time that I recognized that challenges were entirely opportunities. And I've just completely used chemistry to say C2O, challenges to opportunities. So every time I speak with a small business and there's a challenge, I'm always saying, what's the opportunity? So the opportunity for us was to borrow more money in a difficult time and convert the business to a wholesale business. So we engaged the same struggles as any SMEs that we have nowadays. You know, you don't have the skill sets for all the various functions. And it was a family business. So it was my husband and I at the time, but further on in the years to come, as the children graduated from university, they also came into the business. My daughter was a marketing manager, Crystal Chong. My son is now the chief operating officer. He manages production and the operations. And I have another son who studied business at UE, and he manages distribution. So I am totally blessed. If anyone was to ask me what was the single greatest thing we did to grow the business, it took me a while to recognize it because I didn't have a name for it when we were just a small business, but it has to be about governance. I know that in school, in high school, I don't know if there's anybody here who went to Peter and Paul, but I was actually called the class police, and that was not a nice name. So when I went into business, I was very focused on doing the right thing. And of course, I got a lot of flack for it because I remember in the days when you could go into customs and you have your customs friend and you pay for this and you get that. It was never me. I just couldn't do it. And all that time, I didn't know that what I was doing was I was building a culture of corporate governance. So when the junior market was provided, my auditor said to me at the time, Michelle, you need to go on the junior stock exchange. So people asked why. I asked him, I said, why should I? He said, because you're already doing everything a public company needs to do. So it's not going to be any problem for you. We were doing our financials, we were having quarterly reports. We were doing everything we should be doing. So that was a plus for us. There was almost no preparation. So having gone public I have completely enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the privileges. It's a lot more work, but I really love work, and I'm really doing the right thing. And I engaged it. I've met so many people. Social Jan was our mentor, and it has been a fantastic journey for us. We've learned so much. We've grown so much. What I want to jump to is 2019. So we've been on the stock exchange since 2012. And where's my passion now? I have 2 children in the business, 37 and 34, managing the business. And I came to the board and I said, I've been the president at the JEA. I know the needs of these small businesses, and I also know my purpose. I discovered my purpose through coaching. So for the last year, I was being coached personally in business, in strategy, in leadership, family business, everything. So the Honeybun Foundation 2019 will be launched on Tuesday. And this is something that has been in my heart for over 3 years now. And I'm so looking forward to it. The foundation's mission is to create powerful, and I'm going to repeat the word, powerful business models for SMEs and the creative sector. And what this means is that we will not have a cohort of 10 and a cohort of 50 or be engaged in one-on-one. What it means is that we're going to sit down, the directors on the foundation, myself, and maybe some of you also here today will be asked to join, to look for solutions for SMEs, solutions that are going to be big. I'd had a look at this and I said to myself, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I giving up my time? The answer is about Jamaica. It's about Jamaica.
Stay informed on all the happenings at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar. We'll have much more when we return.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
Most of you in here are accountants, right? So before, at the start of my journey, I really didn't like accountants. I just thought, and auditors, I really thought they were there to take my first chunk of profits that I earned, but that has since changed big time. So I love you guys, right? No? Yes, I love you guys more now because I see how important it is to have you guys as friends, close friends too, right? Over the years. So pretty much I'm like a regular Jamaican boy that passes common entrance for Kingston College, Fortis Forever, right? And on entering high school, I think that was just about when my parents separated, and of course the mom always end up with the kids, right? And being in entrepreneurship is in our culture, and our moms are great entrepreneurs. And recently I found out that Jamaica is ranked #1 in the Caribbean as a country where the citizens are involved in co-ownership of businesses, and in the top 10 in the world, which is good. So anyway, from that culture, and entering into high school, I saw how important it was with seeing my mom working very hard on her own to send me through school. But then I also saw my fellow students who were involved in business, their little hustle, so to speak, having more allowance than I did, right? So I started thinking through the whole 5 years at Kingston College, boy, this entrepreneurship thing is really cool, right? Because you get to have extra money. So I started to think about it and sow the seed that I have to do something. So my first thing was I had to get involved with the junior achievement program in the schools that they had at the time, and which I did, and I became the vice president, which was good. So I dictate the ideas, and Boys Champs was coming up. So I was like, I need to solve a problem, and we need to be profitable, right? And I remember going to the Boys Champs, and one of the main things is that regular kids could not afford the jerseys. It was for the adults who were working, right? So I had to find a way to get a sponsor who would sponsor the cost for us to reduce the production cost for the jerseys. And, you know, to cut a long story short, it was very successful. It sell off, so to speak, Jamaican terms, right? Even though whilst going through Kingston College, we have very good mentorship programs and things. After leaving there, I had a little challenge there in the sense that I didn't have the right persons to really direct me as it relates to business, so I lose track pretty much and said, you know what happened? I have my car, and Cable and Wireless came about at the time, and I said, you know what, let's go into Cable and Wireless with a car. It's a good start, right? Until the pressures of corporate Jamaica start to hit you, where you have to get to work at 8 o'clock in the mornings to beat the traffic, right? And the expense of having a motor car, of course. And over time, you know what, I started to think, how can I use the opportunity to help me with my entrepreneurship vision? So my take on it is, because at the time they had good educational grant, my take on it is that I have to be able to solve different problems, which means I have to be skilled in different areas, right? So I didn't focus on one thing too much to say, straight telecom engineering. So as I studied my telecom engineering studies, at the time, things were changing globally. You started to hear about software, virus softwares, and so on. So immediately, I got certified in ethical hacking to know about, softwares to protect your computer system. So that was my mindset. And at the same time, the world had changed, because at that time you thought, in the 90s, you thought if you worked with JPS or Cable and Wireless, you could retire there, honestly. And you were comfortable until 2008, and the whole thing of globalization and changes, and you're hearing like, whoa, redundancy, what's redundancy? So I was like, whoa, you get me? So you had to change your mindset, and immediately my entrepreneurship skills kicked in, and I was like, Dean, you really have to get back on track, because this is what you love. And when I see my fellow engineers that they got redundant from Cable and Wireless, I was like, whoa, with nothing much to do, I was like, what can you do? So when I look around me, I saw a lot of expats doing the work for Cable and Wireless, a lot of Chinese, or I think Japanese at the time, and I was like, but wait, we're trained, well-trained, and we can do the job, right? So I started to think about it, and the same time I started Connect Services Limited, which the name came about to say I wanted to bring things together, connect things together. And I didn't know much persons, I didn't have much connection, so to speak. So outside of maybe on the little party scenes and so on. So I did a business plan is very important, right? At that time, I didn't even know what a business plan was, but somehow I figured it out, did a business plan, and I went to Flo, who just came to Jamaica to do their expansion work, right? And honestly, I tell you, I just prepared, went to arrange for a meeting with a director there, and I called up some of my engineer friends and said, listen, I actually told them I had a contract before I even got the contract, right? But I told them that, listen guys, we're having some projects coming on stream, just be ready. And I went into the meeting with the director of Flow at the time, and I was like, I have a team, this is me, I have a team of engineers, and we are ready to build out your network and thing. And remember, I've never done this before on my own, right? And we had a good conversation. I was very positive. So, in life you have to be very positive. very, very positive and things. So my positive energy was good. And you know what? They gave me the contract. And over time, they started giving me more jobs. And you know what? The money started to come in. And at the same time, I'm excited you know what, without a mentor, so to speak, this thing of accountants to me was really important at the time. I remember the first links I get to an accountant, and they come in and said to do an audit, it's gonna be like $500 or something $1,000. Out of my first year revenue of $1.8 million, I was like, Excel is gonna do it for me, right? but wait, so yeah, I was like, I'm the Excel king, I'm good. So the thing is, your business start to grow now, you feel good, and the telco come back to you and says, because this is how the telco work, they'll come back to you and says, we have the entire Kingston to build out. If you want it, is yours because you're doing good. If not, we can find somebody from overseas. I'm like, hell no, right? So immediately I went to the bank, and the bank was like, yeah. So I am there thinking that the bank, I'm sending a lot of money to the bank, so I'm a very good customer. And I pay my credit card bills. So listen, I need $10 million. I need it in 2 weeks' time. And all of a sudden, somebody come back to me, sir, where is your financial statement? I was like, whoa. So I do of course, my little Excel thing, just no matter how put together with some purple color and thing and it night, right? They're not accepting it. So, I mean, you start to learn the importance of having accountants. Oh man, auditors. Yes, it rough. I tell you, writing the first check for the audited report, it was rough, I tell you. It traumatized me for the first week. But you know what? In terms of being an entrepreneur, as was said before, that you have to love Jamaica. So I love Jamaica, and I always believe that we have to help each other, right? In terms of success. And one of the things I look at is, how can I create more jobs for young folks that does not have the opportunity? Right? And what we have been doing over the years is we have been working with art and even the high schools and even some university students, because you don't have specific telecom related courses that give you the direct hands-on to hit the real world to set up a network for you guys island-wide. You don't have it. So you'll have the theoretical knowledge, but the hands-on experience is not there. So I started like a charity, Connecting Minds, which pretty much we bring high school students in maybe 20 each year. We expose them to like 20 different career choices, give them hands-on, and where they can start to learn about new technologies and what is out there. And it will help them in terms of their decision-making process. And that's what we try to do. Things have changed over time. It's not now about, boy, you love doing what you're doing. That's just a part of it. It's like a puzzle where you have to put things together. So, you have to have good accountants. You have to know what your bank, after a while, depends on the nature of the business that you're in. Capital is very important. Over time, I learned from my accountant that it's very important to know what the banks want. Even though, you try to get over this being traumatized by paying your accountant that big figure each year. So to help me with that, I break it down per month and divide it up, so I have them coming each month. So at least mentally I'm paying them less, right? Each month. But it works for me, and I'll put this out to you, to the accountants out there and auditors out there. Seminars like this, it's very important for medium-sized businesses and small businesses, because sometimes persons don't know how important you guys are, and you have to reach out to persons and invite them here, which is very good.
I am Tamara McHale. Keep watching Business Access TV. Serious about business.
Hi, it's Novia MacDonald White, Senior Associate Editor at the Jamaica Observer. And guess what? You are watching Business Access Television.
You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access TV. Serious.
Serious about business.
Business Access TV comes to you from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar under the theme Achieving Growth, Sustaining Viability. I am Tamara McHale with part 2 of the highlights, starting with a presentation on global turmoil and its implications to Jamaica.
So I'm sure we've all seen in the news what's been going on, the fears of the trade war, global crisis, the world is coming to an end. You know, Trump basically controlling everything. You know, those fears have been widespread and right across the globe. The constant trade war between the US and China, even the Chinese, their headlines, you all see it, are also very concerned about this. Brexit, another huge issue that has been in the news, another huge issue that is affecting global trade and affecting the economies of the world. Trump looking closer at the trade war between US and China. You know, Trump has accused China of unfair trading practices and intellectual property theft. The Chinese believe that the US want to undermine their country's rise, and this has basically led to an economic fallout which has vexed the global markets. Over the past year, the US has imposed over $360 billion worth of tariffs on the Chinese government. The Chinese has retaliated with $110 billion worth of tariffs on US products. Washington has delivered 3 rounds of tariffs this year, and the 4th one was in September of this year. The last round was on meat and musical instruments, and they put a 15% duty on Chinese meat and musical instruments coming into the US. Beijing has hit back with 5% to 25% tariffs on US goods. The last tariff was a 5% levy on US crude oil, the first time fuel has ever been hit in this trade battle, which is a huge, huge thing. And we're feeling it in the oil prices. The oil prices have come off considerably since this tariff has been in. Both sides are basically threatening to take action against one another. Washington has further threatened another set of tariffs for December of this year. China has also planned to hit back with tariffs on 3,000 more products for the US by the end of this year. You know, if nothing is interrupted, this process will reverse 40 years of increased trade and financial and economic integration between China and the US. Other nation companies won't follow the Americans and lead, and they are benefiting from this. So if you look at this, China has felt the pinch with 35 billion of export losses to the US since the beginning of this year, and other countries are benefiting. So Taiwan has been the biggest beneficiary of this. 4.2 billion in the first half of 2019. Trade between the US and Taiwan has grown. Mexico has grown by an additional 3.5 billion of trade between Mexico and the US. EU, Vietnam, other big benefiters of what's happening in the trade war between the US and China. Korea, Canada have also benefited, ranging between $0.9 and $1.5 billion of trade. The US companies have also benefited. They have picked up the slack, and they have also, rather than exporting jobs to China and importing goods from China, they have kept $14 billion worth of exports and goods produced in the US by producing it in the US rather than in China. So we're seeing that net there, what Trump is doing is benefiting the US, is hurting China, and the rest of the world is benefiting. This is where Jamaica, the opportunity for Jamaica here comes in. The problem is that we've killed our manufacturing sector, and we can't pick up the slack like a Taiwan or a Mexico or the EU right off the bat. But there's a huge opportunity here for us to get in the middle of this China-US trade war and benefit. These are the huge headwinds that are ahead of us in terms of trade and how this will affect us in the region as well as the rest of the world. These issues are not new. They have been around for 2 years. So why all of a sudden are people saying that we're near a recession? Well, on March 22nd of this year, the US Treasury curve inverted. What does that mean? That means that long-term rates in the US fell below the short-term rates in the US. It meant that persons were beginning to worry. It meant that those persons that were in stocks and other long-term assets began to sell those assets and went to the safety of treasuries. Once you move to treasuries, the yields fall, the yield curve inverts. What does that mean for recession? Well, since 1975, every recession in the US has been preceded by an inversion of the yield curve. So since 1975, and you'll see it from the chart, so the global financial crisis was preceded by the yield curve inverting. The dot-com bust in early 2000, again, the same with the oil price shock in the 90s, was all preceded by an inversion of the yield curve. And this happened on March 22nd of this year. Typically, the recession usually follows an inversion by 6 to 2 years. So it's not an immediate thing. So this is what has been causing a lot of panic. 6 months to 2 years. Right. So this is what happened in the US and has been causing a lot of panic. Whether it's self-fulfilling or not, it is a cause for concern given our reliance on the US and our reliance globally on trade. So again, coming out of the inversion of the yield curve and coming out of the trade wars, IMF reduced its target for GDP growth from 3.5% to 3.3% for this year on a global basis. You'll see in 2009 where we had the recession. This is a big thing because this is the lowest level of growth that's predicted by the IMF since the 2009 crash. Again, this shows the global distribution of GDP across the globe. The US and China contribute 40% of GDP to the globe. If US and China continue this trade war and production starts to fall in these two territories, you're looking at our global issues throughout the globe. If you add in the rest of Asia and you add in what's happening in Europe and the EU into that, you're looking at a 75% drop, a 75% GDP contribution. Those countries fall in their production in the coming months. So how does that affect us here in Jamaica? Well, we need to look back at what happened at 2008 and when we had the big financial crisis of 2008 and the last time that Jamaica was in recession. You'll see that was a major financial crisis. So the global markets had financial headwinds. There was cheap credit and loose lending terms internationally. Subprime mortgages was the thing of the day. There we had a huge credit crunch. The US economy slowed. That spread right across the globe, and world economy prices were plummeting. So the Fed, in response to that, they dropped rates, had the longest period of expansionary policies throughout the US with interest rates at the lowest they've been for the longest period in US history. Stock market had its worst performance during that period and has recovered considerably since. For Jamaica, back then, we were in a much worse position. So we had an exchange rate that was galloping. I mean, somebody might argue that it's galloping today. I hear we're selling at 143.20 today. Yeah, it's crazy, sorry. But we had a spiraling fiscal deficit, we had unsustained debt levels, rising interest rates, bond prices were under pressure, with negative economic growth, and our rating was under huge pressure. Since then, Jamaica has really turned around following two successful public debt exchanges, JDX and NDX. Our interest costs are rock bottom now. Our maturity profile on government debt has been extended. We've had two successful IMF programs. Government of Jamaica is very proactive in their liability management, improved economic stability, 18 consecutive quarters of growth, albeit very low, and an upgrade in the country's credit rating. Our financial entities are much better regulated, consumer spending is much more moderate, real estate prices have been stable, and financial entities are much better capitalized.
Stay with us, we hear more from Mr. Johan Heaven when we return.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
So what will a slowdown in the world economy look like for Jamaica? We're going to take it on a industry by industry basis. So in terms of tourism, tourism is now 9% of our GDP, still a considerable portion of our GDP. Global slowdown obviously will affect our tourist arrivals and affect our GDP growth. It's critical that we need to diversify our tourism product. We need to tap into other markets. We need to not depend only on the US market. And I see, the minister is doing that. Tourist board is doing that. We're doing a good job, but we still need to tap into other markets. We need to be in China, which is the largest economy in the world. We need to have Chinese come in here. Chinese don't like sand and sea. They like the cultural experience. They're here. Yeah, we need more though. We need, yeah. Remittances, again, a huge contributor to GDP, 16.5% remittances. If there's a slowdown in the US, we're going to see lower levels of remittances coming into Jamaica. Bauxite, we know, is already under pressure. Alpart and Gisco plant have closed. Again, if commodity prices fall, we will see a further fall off in bauxite. Foreign direct investment as well, we've been doing very well. Again, we will see lower levels of FDI and lower levels of foreign exchange coming into the country. This will put further pressure on the foreign exchange rate. Our NIR, however, has been very stable and at the highest level it has been forever. The governor does not like to use the NIR to stabilize the dollar though, but if there is significant pressure on the dollar, he will have to use the NIR to stabilize the dollar and to bring the US into the market. Unemployment at its lowest level, near 6%. BPO sector growing, manufacturing sector growing, but if tourism and other sectors come under pressure, we could see unemployment coming under pressure. And then this is really the most concerning thing for me. It is our local asset prices and Because interest rates are at all-time lows, many of the fund managers have been finding it difficult to find assets to invest in. So you see a lot of the money moving towards real estate, money moving towards the stock market, money moving to other fixed income instruments, and I believe that a lot of those assets are overpriced right now, given the relatively low level of interest rates. Yesterday, the BOJ CD came in at 0.99%, below 1%, below where the US Treasury raises funds at. So our local government is raising money cheaper than the US government. That's because our local institutions don't have anything to do with the funds, and so they're running after assets that are coming out. Again, the stock market, which is doing very well, 2 years we've been the best performing stock market. We have to be very careful with the asset prices and how far they're going, because right now, the levels that they're trading at, in the high 20s, when you look at the price to earnings ratio, my opinion, it's high, and we have to be very careful with where we are right now. Real estate is the new thing. A lot of developments going on, which is great, but we have to be careful of the real estate prices and where they're going. We don't want to end up in a case where we have a stock market bubble or a real estate bubble, and then when the bubble bursts, we all know what happens.
Coming after Johan, the topic is very timely, disasters. And I'm happy to be sharing the panel with Bruce, because the truth is that, thank you, the truth is that business continuity, not just for business, but for government, is key. And that business continuity speaks to recovery planning, which is absolutely important as we try to grapple with these issues. We are reminded often, right here in Jamaica, throughout the Caribbean, close to us, the greatest difficulty is getting back up and running. And the way to minimize that challenge is to begin that planning long before an event occurs. We've been trying very much with the government of Jamaica. Regrettably, we have not made the kind of progress we would have liked, because we saw what happened after Hurricane Ivan, and we see it each time. You shoot from the hip, you set up an organization, try to get it going. So business continuity applies not just to business, but very importantly to the national construct. We're living with a new normal. Every day we hear about disasters all around the world. There are climate-triggered disasters, there are geophysical disasters, and there are human-induced disasters. Multi-hazard disasters coming out of one of the UN global frameworks, what we call the Sendai framework, they're tracking these disasters. And over the last 10 years, well, maybe 1997 to 2017, floods accounted for the greatest impact, and the disasters stemming from natural hazards caused the greatest disruption in terms of displacement of people and so on. So we're talking about a lot of people. What do we have in the Caribbean? We have a situation where, just coming very close, 2 years ago, we had 2 Category 5 hurricanes coming within 2 weeks of each other, devastating our sister territories, many of which are still crawling to try to get back up and running. We had Dorian, which stalled over the Bahamas for several days. We have just never seen that. So not only was it intense, but it sat there. And the implications are very much there. So we ask ourselves, are these processes natural? And we have global systems that underlie natural processes. This is the reality. And very often, however, the response is influenced by the human factor. Natural systems, of course, include where we are. So we are imbued, we're located in the tropical Caribbean. That tells us some things. Plate tectonics in terms of our geology or geophysical construct that makes us prone to earthquakes, the movement of these plates. We have atmospheric oceanic circulation, and then global warming and climate change, which is the central consideration. If you think Brexit is bad, and you think US-China trade war is bad, climate change is underpinning everything. So the impact of the climate, this climate reality, is very far-reaching. We don't have time to go into all of it. However, we heard about our tourism, our dependence, agriculture, manufacturing, housing, settlements, health, everything with which we are concerned in terms of how we make a living, how we generate our businesses, and there's no one in this room who is immune from the impact. And therefore, what we have to focus on, which is what is being pushed globally, is climate action. How do we build resilience? So, the second thing that we have to focus on is disaster risk reduction, which means that we have to understand the science of the hazard. We have to assess our exposure. Nobody's going to be expected to understand how the hazards are generated, but somebody has to do it. So everything has to be underpinned by the science. How exposed are we? And then what are our vulnerabilities? How is it likely to impact? Are the vulnerabilities internal to our companies, to our communities, to our homes, or are they external? For example, we had a very serious case of flooding. Some of you might remember it. It's a few years ago. Major rainfall event, wasn't a hurricane or anything, the Marcus Garvey flooding that wiped out coffee board, wiped out a lot of that coffee. That was a vulnerability that living next to the gully, which was not properly cleared, and also because we had construction that blocked some of the natural drainage. Those are external vulnerabilities that affect and have a major impact. And regrettably, again, we don't often measure the full cost of this impact, which is where our accounting profession and financial professionals come in. We need to manage, as we said before, during and after the event, because we have to prepare ourselves not only to see what's coming down the pike, but very importantly, to be able to get back up and running. Disasters are therefore considered failed development. And when we're dealing with natural disasters, as the term is used, disasters that are caused by natural events, it usually is a reflection of what we have failed to do in terms of our infrastructure, what we have failed to do in terms of our planning, and what we have failed to do in terms of ensuring that we minimize loss.
Don't go anywhere. More from the ICAJ Business Seminar when we return.
Dodgen Global offers a CPA scholarship program to team members who join our team. A career in accountancy at Dodgen Global is a great choice and can offer you excellent job prospects. We believe that an accounting education is the greatest gift you can give yourself or anyone else. Few gifts make as significant an impact as the gift of an accountancy education with a job. It's a contribution that lasts a lifetime in the form of learning, opportunity, and success. Join our team and get the opportunity to be part of our CPA scholarship program. This scholarships awards program will be administered by the HR department of Dodgen Global. Requirement: first degree in accounting. Employed at Dodgen Global. Willing to pursue the CPA examination. Here's how to apply. Submit application to Staff Accountant, Dodgen Global. Email sa@dodgen.com.
We do not have generally integrated planning. We have informal, unstructured development, sometimes implicitly encouraged. And then we have structured developments. I think many of us are investors. We go for short-term financial interest, financial gain, without looking at the long term. However, we cannot really continue to do that because we pay a price. And sometimes the price may not be in our lifetime. You know, we take the case of Caribbean Terrace, which is one that is used all the time. 1994, Ivan wiped away that. Those houses should never have been built there, okay? But they were built. Persons who purchased them didn't have a clue, and you pay that price. We talked about the interconnectivity in terms of globalization and so on, and the fact that there is a cascading effect. So we moved out to this planet, this environment, since that's the third element. Very often we view this environment in terms of just getting a permit for development. So we have to do environmental assessments. We have adversarial positioning. There's always quarreling. However, it's a multifaceted and complex topic, but importantly, it's a development issue, it's a business issue, and it is closely intertwined with economics, with finance, with strategy and people. It's not solely an issue of protecting natural resources. It's not just about trees, hugging trees at all. It goes way beyond that. So we know we have natural systems. Very importantly, we have built systems. And we tend to spend less time, less focus on how those built systems are integrated with the natural. It's the environment, the planet, it's our life support system. You can't live without clean air, you can't live without water. And there are resources, there are economic assets, that's what we build on. And again, one of the things we pay less attention to, and increasingly we have to, is health. That chikungunya outbreak, the dengue, the mosquito breeding, all of that related to warming temperatures, climate change, and it is going to get worse.
My focus will be on the man-made disasters affecting businesses that are unique to businesses. So I've subtitled my presentation, Preparing and Recovering from Unique Disaster Situations. And when I use the word disaster in this context, I mean just about anything that could bring your business to a grinding halt. I had a session with one of my clients, I think earlier this week, pray for me, and one of the things, the thing that we were trying to do, we were trying to identify those events that, and we use this word, that could cripple the organization. Historically, when we think of a disrupting event to a business, our minds tend to think about the fire in the computer room or some physical thing that's disrupting our operations. And obviously, that is part of the discussion. And by the way, many businesses still struggle to recover from those unique physical disruptions. And our moderator spoke to that earlier. So when I was thinking about the presentation, I thought to myself that I'd try and give a broader methodology around how to identify these unique disrupting events with a view of making sure that if they happen, you can still continue your business. I've pretty much spoken about this in my opening remarks. Yes, natural disasters, they're everywhere, they affect our region. And this is just to repeat my opening comments. We will have less empathy. Your stakeholders will be less understanding if you have an event that is unique to you while all your stakeholders are up and running. Ironically though, if there was, say, a hurricane, and because of poor disaster preparation, you took longer to restore your business than the competitors, then you're going to find yourself in a unique situation. And so this speaks to the importance of disaster preparation. I'm not really focusing on that. So let's look at some common, unique disasters affecting some of the key business processes that we have. So the real value to me of this presentation, and what I want you to take away, is how to find these non-traditional type things. You know, I cannot keep repeating that we tend to think of the fire and the electrical failure and stuff like that. Technology failures, British Airways had a embarrassing situation. Didn't actually cripple them from an operational perspective, but it created significant adverse impact on their reputation. They had a power surge that brought down their check-in system and their baggage claim system. The average passenger wasn't able to get a flight until 3 days later. $122 million in hard costs, and the reputational damage was immense. Didn't cripple them in that sense, but certainly went beyond the realm of their risk appetite, I'm sure. Cyber attacks, we don't need to talk about that one too much. Equifax had an issue that's well documented. And here's another one of those unique things that I'm talking about that we would do well. I'm going to end the presentation by showing you a quick methodology as to how to find these non-traditional type things. Segregation of duties. Would you have thought that not properly segregating duties in your company could literally cause the company to die? You've thought about it, right? So Barings Bank, one of the reasons why Barings Bank, Nick Leeson, this is well documented. He was a trader, and he had access apparently to trading and settling and doing stuff that was incompatible for one person to do. And so the obvious question is, what are the segregation of duties issues, believe it or not, that could be fatal to your organization? Key third parties. The world is so interconnected today that we are heavily dependent on major third parties to deliver significant aspects of our businesses. So much so that there's a separate standard to dealing with giving assurance for how third parties are managing your business. Does the third parties that you work with, do you know if they have a business continuity plan? Could they export a disaster to your business? And the list could go on. Compliance issues. If you're regulated and you don't have certain types of persons on staff who have the required approvals or certifications from the regulator, they could shut you down. The first thing is basically to do risk assessment. And really what that is to try and identify what these things are. In PwC, we have a standard list of known threats with some leading questions. And it might seem kind of banal, but let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about here. So this is a very simple questionnaire surrounding electrical power risk, right? So I'm talking about doing a risk assessment. So you have electrical, water, fire. Who is your neighbor? The business next door to you. We had a client where there was a big cylinder that was right next door to the boardroom because their neighbor was a restaurant that emerged overnight. Think of your impact financially. How much would you lose? Operationally, would they shut us down? Or reputation, would it be at stake? Could this cause an environmental issue? So what are the risks? There are some standard risks that have to do with your buildings. But the real value comes when you have, say, all your executives in a room, and you look at all your key objectives, and you ask each other or challenge each other to answer the question, if we were not able to get all of our tellers certified or investment managers certified, what would be the impact? So you basically do an impact likelihood assessment of all your risks that you have identified. And at the end of it, you should come up with something like this, which is known as a heat map. So having done the identification of the risks, you ask yourself on a scale of, say, 1 to 4, if this risk were to happen, what would be the impact? And then, what would be the likelihood of this risk happening to us? So in this case, if we had an air quality issue, the impact on a scale of 1 to 4 is 4. This is only for illustrative purposes. And in this entity, they say it is very likely that we would have it. And so this risk ends up in the top right-hand corner. If you want to have your viable businesses and to achieve growth, which is the broader theme of this conference, every company represented in this room, you should ensure that you have a heat map like this, and any risk that's in the top right-hand corner, you need to take some action. So if you realize that you don't have a backup site to your primary computer room, and you ask your IT persons and they tell you it's $1 million to put it in, and those are expensive treatments, it's better to spend the $1 million and save the business and your reputation, all right?
When we return, we hear from Anna K. Jones's presentation on human disaster versus natural disaster, a youth's perspective.
Great design is not only how things look, but also how well they work. The GLC, more than meets the eye.
I was asked to give the youth perspective, as moderator said. So what qualifies me to do such? First of all, I am a youth. Yes. And I am passionate about the environment. As she said, that is why I decided to pursue a minor in energy and environmental physics. We want to be able to develop technologies that will help sustain our future. So this is the first question that some people still have an issue with. Is climate change real? And I would answer with a very deflated, yes, yes it is. It's very exhausting to think that this is something that we still have to be wondering about and explaining to people that people don't understand. Because climate change happens without us. You know, the Earth has been through ice ages and so forth. It happens without us. Slightly more intelligent question would be, does human activity impact climate change? And the answer is again, yes it does. One of the first companies to do a comprehensive climate study was actually an oil company. And this was in like the 80s. And they found amongst themselves that yes, what we're doing is impacting the climate. And they didn't do anything about it. They didn't tell anyone. And now we have super hurricanes. So that's fun. So silly questions out of the way. Is it really that serious? Well, you tell me. Of course, we have hurricanes and droughts and wildfires. Those are things that happen with our environment. And then when we have those hurricanes and droughts and wildfires and other disasters, we have the loss of life, we have the displacement, we have the destruction of land, infrastructure, or food supply goes down, so we come down here. And then, of course, we have the human side of it, the burning of the Amazon rainforest that happened this year. Those were man-made and intentional for cattle breeding purposes. Constant fossil fuel burning, soil erosion due to improper farming practices. And then come here again, and you see a lot of the times these things, these human impacts, are sort of excused because of these issues that we're having. But then we come back here and we say that, well, wait, these things that we're doing impact up here. They increase the intensity of these natural disasters. Imagine during Hurricane Dorian or after Hurricane Dorian, a lot of persons were not able to enter the US. I can't say for sure why that is, but we see a lot of issues like that. Amazon rainforest persons were also using it as an excuse to damage indigenous people living in the forest. Native Americans in the US often have to deal with oil pipelines being run through their reservations, and then oil spills that spill into their water supply. And classism. It's very punishing to be poor, because you're just trying to live paycheck to paycheck, and somebody's there saying, just buy one less latte a day. And you are being blamed. The lower class is often blamed for impacting the environment with their practices. So, for example, who has ever had somebody say, you know, just don't eat meat. It's because you're eating meat why the cattle farming and the methane from the cows and all those things, and it suddenly becomes your fault when you're just trying to live your life. And this is something else. So this is one that I've thought of very recently. For a lot of us, the plastic straw ban was very inconvenient, but mildly so. You know, you have to drink, you drink faster, or you don't use a straw, or maybe you get a trendy metal straw. We don't think about persons, for example, with neurological challenges who cannot manipulate those metal straws and plastic straws, paper straws and bamboo straws. The plastic straws were very convenient for them. A new one that I saw, who in here has asthma? I don't mean to expose anybody's business, but if anybody in here has asthma, they're looking at you now because they're saying that your asthma pumps are releasing methane, and so that is impacting the climate. And you're just trying to breathe. Why are they coming for you? You're just trying to breathe. And so all these things come together, and it is that serious. You have these discrimination against these marginalized people who are just trying to exist. So what is really going on here? This is a strong word. I don't hope nobody feels offended by it since a business conference, but really and truly, you have corporations, especially particularly these massive corporations that really don't care about who they hurt, who they impact, what oil spills where. Their only concern is that the oil is spilled and they cannot sell it. So then, the government, a lot of global governments allow for these type of these pollutions to be occurring because they're getting, you know, a little money on the side. So they turn a blind eye and they don't say anything. And also, you have a lot of these corporations and the government putting the bulk of the responsibility on the citizens, when really and truly, they're not the majority. You're fixing a symptom of a problem and you're not going to the root, and you're just ignoring the root completely. Citizens, global citizens, residential pollution only accounts for about 12%, where everything else is, you know, company-based, corporation-based. We are inheriting a planet that will not be able to sustain. I wanted to highlight some of the key youth players here. If anybody follows American politics, this is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's daughter. She is very strong in the climate protests in the US. I wanted to highlight John Paul Hussein, particularly from India, because this week India had to announce a public health emergency because their air quality pollution was literally, and I do mean literally, off the charts. Their meters capped out, could not record any higher. It was 20 times what is considered a safe amount of pollution. 20 times that. So yeah. And Greta Thunberg is very famous. She's kind of the face of this whole Fridays for Future protest. She's pretty much one of the founders for it. She has Asperger's, which is a disorder on the autism spectrum. She's a brilliant young woman, and she practices what she preaches. Trust me, reusable packages. She takes the boats instead of the planes. She takes trains instead of cars. She practices what she preaches. She means it. So what can be done? What do we expect as youth from you? We're looking for our governments to step up. We want to change the mindset. We don't want the apathy. We want people to see that this is a serious problem. It's not just 30 years down the line or 40 years down the line when, you know, some of the older folks will be dead. And we're just gonna have to deal with it. We're just gonna have to deal with it. It's gonna be too late by then. People need to understand that now. And then we need to shift the focus from the everyday citizen. Of course, I don't want anybody to say that I'm saying that the citizens are not at fault at all. I'm hoping nobody in here is a litterer. You know, nobody's throwing the garbage out the car into the gully or anywhere else. But really and truly, we are not the main source. We're persons living our daily lives while big companies are getting away with murder. Literally, almost. Then we need to continue making our laws. It is hard, change is hard. However, it is necessary. We have to protect our natural resources, and we want to be able to move towards renewable energy. We want to be able to make that shift so that that is one less thing to be worrying about. And then, of course, it doesn't make sense to have the laws if you don't enforce them. We want to have our government enforce the laws for the small citizens as well as for the big companies. We have to, and then of course, we have to do our disaster planning because we cannot afford to let a hurricane, Category 5 hurricane, even brush us in Jamaica. The Bahamas, you know the Bahamas had internet throughout all of that. If we even got the tailwind, our internet would have been knocked out. The JPS would have shut down.
Your business matters. Business Access TV offers you the most innovative and effective advertising solution for your business, specializing in B2B sales, cost-effective solutions, the customers you want, the repetition you need. No matter the size and nature of your company, your business matters.
Call us at 876-291-6233 or 876-376-4225. Email sales@batvja.com.
Thanks for staying with us for part 2 of Business Access TV's coverage of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar. We now turn over to the presentations of the challenges with meeting accounting standards and regulatory requirements.
All right, so I've been asked to speak about financial reporting challenges that are associated with entities being on exchanges, particularly Jamaica Stock Exchange. So the JSC has been getting a lot of attention in recent times based on the organization, the performance of our stock market, and also the fact that from a financial reporting perspective, I think the listed entities have kept a clean sheet. And we have been able to avoid many of the financial reporting scandals that we see emerging globally. But being on an exchange takes you into what I call the public accountability space. And you are inviting others to invest in your entity, others who are dependent on the performance of your entity to maintain and create value. So oftentimes when you have these IPOs, and an IPO can be either debt or equity, you find that you have individuals who are investing, persons who have foregone lattes to buy stocks. Sorry, Johan. Johan and I are very good friends, by the way. You have pension funds who are investing in these IPOs. And I audit some pension funds, and I find pension funds have heavy stakes in a lot of these IPOs. And each of us knows the importance of pension funds to long-term savings and just to the general economy. So you're in public accountability space. Your responsibility, your stakeholder group has expanded tremendously. You have debt holders, equity holders, you have regulators who are meant to ensure that you operate in a manner that's consistent with best practice. You have the analysts who are tearing apart your performance and your results. And you also now have the attention of the global markets. People are watching the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So there is a picture of the Jamaica flag hanging outside the, I think it's the New York Stock Exchange, and it has gotten great publicity. There is an interview of Marlene Street Forest in the American media. So we are on the map. Once you get into that public accountability space, however, there are certain obligations that attend to you. And the main ones really are ensuring that you have a talent pool that allows you to understand, interpret, and apply all the financial reporting standards. These standards are extremely complex as the International Accounting Standards Board tries to fine-tune the accounting standards. You find that these standards are changing as the IASB and the FASB, which does the US GAAP promulgation, as they try to harmonize. You find that you have changes that are coming consistently, and these changes are complex. So in terms of your talent pool, you have to ensure that you have individuals who have the time, the agility, the intellectual capital, the access to technology that allows them to interact with these standards. And oftentimes what you find is that these are the same individuals who are doing the day-to-day transaction processing and financial reporting. So one of the challenges that entities will face, and a big one now is with the insurance accounting standard, is trying to come to terms with the new standards while continuing to meet existing shareholder and stakeholder financial reporting requirements. And that's a huge challenge. But we have to appreciate that we are a proud nation. We like to see ourselves on the international stage. We like to compare ourselves to the larger, more profitable, more developed nations. And if we are to do that, then our financial reporting has to be consistent with theirs. We have to be able to compare our results with their results in a manner that allows for real analyses, comparison, and differentiation. And we have many entities in Jamaica as well that have huge ambitions, and there are entities that have publicly explored the option of listing on exchanges globally. And if we are to do that, then we have to have the appropriate financial reporting mechanisms.
My presentation here today is really not to go into the rules or anything like that. I don't want to bore you, but I want to speak from a practical standpoint, because I do get the calls from listed companies in terms of, saying that every day there is a new rule being developed. The stock exchange is moving like they're a New York Stock Exchange, right? We can't manage this. So I'm here to speak to you in terms of the challenges that listed companies have shared with the stock exchange in terms of, what their experience has been, right? And we do listen to these concerns and look at ways to address them if we can, right? So before going into the challenges, I want to just give you a breakdown of the regulatory environment for listed companies. And I should have asked, do you guys know what ongoing requirements is speaking to, right? All right, let me just explain quickly. So as Garfield stated here, you have the first stage where the companies come to market, and they come to market usually through a prospectus offering. Now that's what you call your initial listing requirements, or satisfying initial listing requirements. When you're now on the stock exchange, you would be required to maintain that listing that you got to comply with the rules and standards of the market. So that is what we call ongoing requirements, right? And that is where you find that most of the challenges exist. So the regulatory environment, of course, I'm here, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, as a listed company, you have to report to the stock exchange. But how many persons know that as an issuer, you also have to report to the Financial Services Commission? They are the ultimate regulator of the securities market, right? So essentially, everything that you send to the stock exchange, or everything that a listed company send to the stock exchange, they are required to also send such information to the Financial Services Commission, given the provisions in the Securities Act. Of course, listed companies are required to report to shareholders because you need the information to know what is going on in the company. You need to know, should I continue to hold this stock? Should I sell? Or should I buy stocks in another company, right? And the only way you can get that is through the communication channels that the listed company uses to communicate to you as shareholders and prospective investors. And of course, we can't leave these persons out. You have the market observers, financial analysts, and I stated prospective investors because, sometimes they're even, they are not so reserved with their comments, So where you file a financial statement and it's deficient, an analyst would pick it up and say, what is this? How can the board of this company release such information? How can the stock exchange allow this to go through? So, it is necessary, and that's how a market should really function.
We take our final break from the ICAJ Business Seminar, but we may have saved the best for last. Stay with us.
There are a lot of local companies who are really doing exceptionally well at the whole CSR initiatives and are doing good for Jamaica and elsewhere. And so, of course, with Cinco, everybody knows about their recycling program, which is growing and has, because of their initiative in schools, it means that they're encouraging young people to be environmentally conscious and aware. And they've also gotten big corporates involved as well. You almost are forced to embrace these kinds of initiatives because when they are making a choice in their spending dollar, they look at sustainable living brands, they look at companies that are purpose-driven, they look at companies that are giving back. So that's another good example of a local company who is really working the CSR program well. I would have to mention some of the work that the Grace Kennedy foundations are doing. So we have two foundations. We have the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation, which started in the 1970s, and it's a very unique foundation because that foundation it was a staff initiative and continues to be. And it started in the 1970s coming out of employees noticing a great deal of turmoil in the communities surrounding our headquarters at 73 Harbor Street. And so they decided that they wanted to do something. They wanted to create positive initiatives that would assist these communities, and particularly young people. And so they went to the CEO at the time and said, we have an idea, we want to donate. And CEO Carlton Alexander said, sure, the company will, whatever you donate, the company will match it ×2. And that has continued. And so the foundation actually celebrated 40 years this year. And continues to do some really incredible work. So we have 6 homework centers. And what we realized, particularly starting in downtown, and now it has spread, we have in Majesty Gardens, we also have in De La Vega City, in Spanish Town, and we try to also place it close to where we operate. So we also have a homework center in Sav, where we make the hams, and we have one in Barbican near the Hilo. And what we've done there is given young people a space, a safe space to do their homework, to get tutoring, to get mentoring. We also provide psychological counseling. And right now, just over 600 students across the country benefit from those homework centers. And on Tower Street, we also have a STEM center because we saw that as an important need. And so this is not telling us anything that we haven't said before.
At Grace Kennedy, we take a very holistic approach. We care is our mantra, and we apply that to everything. We care about quality. We care about our customers, and that's why we focus on quality. We care about our communities. That's why we engage with them to make the communities better. We, of course, care about our shareholders, right, Alison, because they have to get that return. And we operate with honesty, integrity, and trust in all things, as you can see there. That is right under First Global Bank. But it's not just our regulated entities, it's everybody that operates with that creed. And we can't do it without our staff. So there's a great deal of focus on our staff. And we find that particularly when we're attracting people, the work that we do is very exciting to them because we are working with our communities and we are trying to give back as best we can. And so I will leave you with what I thought was a really great quote to say that it's not really a hard choice anymore. If it's done properly, it really does flow to the triple bottom line. And it does benefit not only your organization, but the wider community. And so people not only want it, they have come to expect it. So CSR is not a choice, it's a responsibility. Everybody expects it of you these days. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching part 2 of the highlights from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica Business Seminar. It was held under the theme Achieving Growth, Sustaining Viability. Until next time, I am Tamara McHale. Keep watching Business Access TV, serious about business.
We are serious about the business of real estate, so catch Home Sweet Home Sundays at 4:30 p.m. or if you missed it, check our website at batvja.com.
You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access. Business Access. Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
Business Access TV is here at the JSC Core Competencies to Excel as a Corporate Secretary. I'm your host, Andrew Laidley. Please stay with us.
I wish to welcome you to yet another workshop, Corporate Secretaries Workshop. As you know, we have these workshops each year, and the reason we continue to do so is that we feel that we should be at the cutting edge of any changes that is occurring in whether locally or globally. We feel that the workshops have been beneficial to us so far, and that with each day when we have these changes, we should continue to look at educating the persons in this industry. This morning and this workshop is very special, as we will be hosting, it is being hosted in association with the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. And as we move towards introducing the Corporate Governance Index, I think today is especially important so that we can see how this can be incorporated into what we do as company secretaries and others within the industry. It is especially important that we look at this to see how our companies will score higher in terms of corporate governance. Today is intended to be a very good workshop based on the persons who will be presenting. So I invite you to stay tuned, ask the relevant questions, and ensure that when we leave here, we can implement what we have learned.
The Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators is an institution that certifies secretaries, chartered secretaries, and I believe it is the only institution in the world that does that. It's incorporated by Royal Charter and has its base in England, London, England. And our dear leader, Simon Osborne, is the CEO of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries. In Jamaica, we have the Association of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, which is a branch of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries. Today, we are very happy to be hosting this seminar with the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and I hope that what we present today, you might find something to take away from it, because we are going to try to give you something practical that you can use in your everyday life.
Governance has to suit each jurisdiction. One size cannot fit all. Even within a peer group of companies engaged in similar activities, similar business, because the dynamic is going to be different, because the business conditions are going to be different, the governance framework will necessarily be different. And as you comply or explain, also within a peer group of companies doing the same, broadly the same activity, you will find that they comply in different ways. And that's the beauty of a code of principles. So what do we mean by governance? The Cadbury definition, the process by which an organization is directed or controlled. The other perceived virtue of corporate governance on the part of politicians and policymakers is that it leads to increased opportunities and choice for all. Now that's one of those wonderful glib expressions that rolls off the tongue of a politician. And it sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But what on earth does it mean? As a political aspiration, it's great. Opportunities and choice for all. Hurrah, yeah, we'll all vote for that. But can we really expect corporate governance to deliver such an overtly political objective? I'll leave that one hanging in the air. Poor old Bob Diamond, he gets a bit of a caning over this one. He did actually say that corporate governance is not how you behave when you think no one is watching. He did actually say that. But I think it's a good reminder that, there's no point trying to do one thing, say one thing and do another. That sort of hypocrisy, you'll get found out eventually. The truth will always out. Governance is concerned with the exercise of power, the role of directors, the responsibilities of shareholders, and how those are balanced. And it also deals with disclosure, transparency, accountability, internal control, and making sure you avoid that concentration of power in too few hands. Hence the desire, it's now become standard, certainly in the UK. America's finding it harder, but actually separating the roles of chairman and chief executive so that you achieve a more constructive tension at the top levels in the C-suite. What are some of the governance hot topics? Well, I don't know what it's like here, but remuneration in the UK never ceases to amaze me. And the way in which non-executive directors serving on remuneration committees aren't smelling the coffee, I just don't get it. But and the United States is just as bad. And what that is leading to is remuneration which is detached from performance, or levels of remuneration detached from performance, are just leading to increasing inequality of wealth. And I think that could lead to unfortunate consequences socially. And it's something that has to be tackled. Hot topic. Legal risk has risen up the scale of corporate risks. The whole board diversity thing, gender is a major factor. But there is no doubt about it, board behaviour improves the more women join the board. And I know that from my own experience, funny enough, in a charity where I was deputy chair and I chaired the nomination committee. And I had to wield the knife. I removed 6 older male trustees, brought in 4 ladies, all of whom were younger. The average age came down. The speed with which business was transacted improved. Shorter board meetings, I'll drink to that, made a difference. Now that's one example, but I think there's no doubt about it that I think the presence of women in boardrooms adds beneficially to the decision-making process. You've got the whole responsible capitalism issue, the managing of stakeholders and accountability to wider stakeholders. And that, interestingly, has led to the appointment of a committee now for a code of governance for private companies. I think that's long overdue in the UK. When you think about some of the bigger private companies, and I'm sure you've got them here, if one of those collapses, the impact on the economy and on the government could be significant. And then the whole question of board evaluations. Following the financial crisis, ICSA did some work on boardroom behaviours, the conclusion of which were 4 uncomfortable truths. Well-run companies can make strategic and sometimes catastrophic misjudgments. Risk management not properly overseen, monitored or reviewed by the board. Often it was just left to the audit committee. It's a board responsibility, is oversight of risk. Remuneration and incentivization not aligned with shareholders' interests. And a failure to inform stakeholders, not just shareholders, stakeholders, sufficiently. That work we did identified 3 areas needing attention. Institutional. Are corporate governance policies and architecture fit for purpose? Has management installed adequate processes and systems? And are directors exhibiting appropriate behaviours? So we had there the institutional, the organisational, and the behavioural. Now, we identified in that work that good practice boardroom behaviour was characterised by those 9 features. So clear understanding of the board's role. The board is there to oversee the management of the business. The board is not there to manage the business. And non-executive directors forget it's a case of noses in, fingers out. They smell the state of the business, they don't finger it. Does this business pass the smell test? Once the non-executive directors start interfering in the management of the business, it's very hard to hold an executive to account. You can't. You've syndicated the responsibility and the liability. Appropriate deployment of knowledge, skills, experience and judgment. So what balance of those have you got on the board? Independent thinking. Assumptions and established orthodoxy need to be questioned. Challenge has to be constructive. If people come onto a board full of suspicion or just trying to show off what a tough guy I am, I'll show these executives up for a load of incompetent idiots. If that's the mentality which a non-executive has, they're asking for trouble because it will just lead to tension, in fact conflict on the board. Non-executive directors have to be constructive friends of the management team. Can't overemphasize that. Constructive friends. Yes, and it's knowing how to challenge in a way which doesn't put people's backs up. And it requires a skill, emotional intelligence for a start. Yes, there has to be rigorous debate. The decision-making environment has to be supportive. There needs to be a shared vision. And for the chair, it's vital to close each item of business in a timely way, not let it go round and round and round ad nauseam. That's not the way to do it.
We go to a short break. More when we return.
Doggen Global Introduction. Doggen Global is an integrated multidisciplinary professional service firm. We are integrated as one firm and provide several professional services, including audit, accounting, tax, IT, risk, HR, performance, M&A, corporate recovery, and other advisory services. The firm is organized in several professional service units, which includes Dog and Auditors, Dog and Advisors, Dog and Legal, Dog and Finance, Dog and HR Solutions, Dog and Tech Solutions, Dog and Media, Dog and Corporate